Well, welcome everyone. I'm glad you could join us today for Picture Book Chat. My name is Mary Ellen Brax. I'm the Public Services Manager for Early Learning, and I'm in charge of all our story times and also any programming for children from birth to 8 years old. And with me today is my colleague, Sheri Boggs.
Hi, I am our Youth Collection Development Librarian. That means I'm a buyer for the district, and I buy everything for kids from 0 to 18. So picture books up through YA.
A very fun job, I must say.
It's so much fun.
I mean, I love my job too. It's very fun working with the kids. So,
Yeah.
But today we have some books, new picture books that are out. And we wanted a chance to be able to show you these brand new picture books that have been coming in, because we know you haven't been able to browse our new bookshelves. So we have some books that we'd like to share with you today, some of the fun ones that we've found. And so we're going to start off with Sheri telling us a little bit about the first book we have to talk about today.
Okay. So when I see these things come in, I'm always wanting to tell Mary Ellen about them. And sometimes I'm in the office and she's at home, or vice versa. So this is a way for us to do it and you guys get to listen in. So when this one came in, this is Unstoppable. I hope you can see that. I didn't know what to think about this book. There is a lot going on. It's by Adam Rex, who's done some fantastic books. The most recent one is Nothing Rhymes with Orange, which is hilarious. So great author. I was already excited about that, but this book opens up and a crow is running away from a cat and runs into a crab who is just like, I would really love to be able to fly. And the bird is like, yeah, well, I'd really like to have some claws. And so they kind of look at each other and realize if they put themselves together, they can become a bird crab or a crab bird. And so they're flying around, like they can pinch, they can fly. And then they are like, you know, who really has it great is ducks, because they can swim and fly. And they don't find a duck, but they find a turtle. And so they latch onto this turtle and they become this new creature, and then they run into a bear. So you think you know how this story is going. Like they basically, every animal that they latch onto becomes part of the creature that they are, and they can do new things. But then, Mel, should I talk about the twist?
Yes.
Okay. Not to give too much away, as they're flying around, these like 4 forest creatures, they realize that part of the forest is being torn up by a bulldozer to make way for, I think, a new shopping mall. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, whoa, like we can do a lot of things, but what are we going to do about this? And suddenly they realize that they can go to Congress. There's this thing called Congress, and they can solve the problem. Or actually, I think they go to the president first and then to Congress. So it turns into this crazy civics lesson. Like this picture book that seems to be about a combination of animals suddenly becomes this thing about how democracy works and how we can all work together to affect change. So it's an interesting book, and I wanted to talk to you about it, Mel, because I was trying to picture, like, could you use this in story time, or would your kids just be going, you know, and like what ages you would use it with, and how, you know, as like our early learning specialist, you would approach a book like this, which is super fun. I mean, this is like something I would recommend to parents to read to their kids, just because it's like hilarious, but there's also a lot going on. So Mel.
Right. There is. So I had a couple of thoughts as I was reading this. I thought this would be really good for a first or a second grade classroom, even though it's a picture book. I think you still could read it to preschoolers. However, I think some things are going to be a little lost when they read it. But there's some fun parts of it. So I'll just show you a couple of pictures. This one here, you can see the bird and the crab flying, and they say they're a crab bird or a bird rab. And one of the things I thought would be really fun was making up your own animals, like combining different animals and making up your own animals. So here, there's 3, you know, there's the one with the turtle that you were talking about, and the names are bird rabbertle, crabbertle bird, crab turd. And so, and then they're like, we've done it, friends. So I think from that perspective, that could be a lot of fun. I might use it with older preschoolers. I think the 3-year-olds, if you were reading it with a child in your lap, that might be fun. But when it takes that turn and they talk about who they're going to go to when they see that their forest is being bulldozed down, then you get into a little bit more complex thinking there. And I think that I would still read it. I mean, personally, I would read it to a preschooler. However, I think you're just going to get more understanding and start that beginning civics, especially with your first and second graders. But I could be wrong. I mean, you could have some preschoolers who really latch onto this. I did like that they made the president a woman.
I was going to say that too. I was like, nice touch.
And just that they asked, when the president explains, well, I can't make that ruling, it needs to go to Congress, and they ask who's Congress, and then they have a description of what Congress is. Of course, they say unstoppable. And so it was just kind of gives you a beginning insight into that governmental structure that we have. And but it was a really interesting book. I think the artwork is interesting. I love the beginning pages too, with the forest there, and like you can see the little eyes. And it ends the same way. So I did really enjoy that. I thought there was a couple of fun activities you could do with that. So you could just work it into a nature theme or a science theme about nature. And then you could talk a little bit about conservation there. So, I mean, I thought that would be a fun thing to do. And again, I mentioned making the creature with all the attributes you might want from different animals and coming up with their own names would be just great for vocabulary development even. It just, you know, that you're playing with words, and that playing with words can be fun. I also thought there's a part in the book where they come across a bear, and the bear joins them, and he's really grumpy. And I thought, how much fun would that be to talk about? Well, what would you do if you ran across a grumpy person like that and didn't want to talk to you? How would you do that? So you kind of tie in the social emotional there as well. So it was amazing how many things it hit on. So
those are great ideas. Like looking at the illustrations and just how bold they are, like I could see where it would really appeal to smaller kids. And at first I was disappointed that it takes the turn that it does, because I feel like it kind of takes it out of that age range. But after listening to you talk, like there's nothing wrong with a book that becomes more advanced, like in the course of the narrative. And I think, you know, having such an inviting beginning, I think that's great for kids, you know, to be hooked by a book, and then, you know, kind of come to something difficult and work through that, you know, and maybe ask an adult, you know, what is all this, and be able to have those conversations. You can finish this book with a sense of mastery, I think.
Yes. So I was thinking too that I don't know if I'd read it in Storytime, so to speak. I don't know how it would go in Storytime. I would maybe play with it a little bit and see just how the kids in Storytime reacted, but I would be more apt to read it in an older classroom or maybe one-on-one with a preschooler. But, you know, it's kind of fun. It's different.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed it from that perspective there. So yeah, it's a fun new book. Again, that was by Adam Rex.
Yes. And that was Unstoppable.
Unstoppable. which I
Okay.
like that idea.
Yeah. And jumping off of that, I also like the collaboration that's involved, that
Yes,
they all become better than the sum of their parts as this
exactly.
hybrid thing that they become.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great little message within that book.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
the next one I want to show you is One Golden Rule at School, a counting book. And I'm trying to hold this so there's not too much glare. So this one, this is such a hard time, I think, for kids that are missing their classrooms.
Mhm.
And what appealed to me about this book, I ordered this probably early in the shutdown and was wondering even then, is this going to be a pertinent title, with so many people having to do school at home.
Mhm.
But I think this is a great book for, kids who would be starting school, like kindergarten or first grade in schools where they aren't able to go, to kind of get that introduction to what a classroom is like. That you have these little segments of the day where you do certain things. So the book works really well on that level. Like you see these kids, here they are playing with blocks. I think there's a nap time at some point. Oh yeah, 8 puppets. They're all on their little nap mats. So I think this is great for kids to talk about what happens during the day at school. And then it's a counting book, like it counts up by certain things. And there are all these things that kids can look for in the illustrations. And those are really great. They're paintings and kind of cut paper. So there's lots of like little realia for kids to look for in here.
Mhm.
And I think kids are really, fascinated by that kind of thing. So it's kind of a gentle counting book, like it's not overly complicated. So I don't think a kid's going to get completely overwhelmed by all the things to count. And of course, anytime you're talking about the golden rule, I think that's about the perfect age to start introducing that concept. Any younger, I think it's a little abstract for kids to
Mhm.
understand what the golden rule is. And I also really like the diversity of the classroom. Like you see
I
different
love.
abilities represented. Yeah, kids from different cultures. So Mel, what did you think of this and how would you use it?
Yes, I loved it. I like the fact that it counted up, and then you had, as you counted up, you were able to look at the page. So you could use it with a group, but you could also use it individually. And then for each number that they had, there were sets of items for that number. So for 7 colors here,
Yeah.
there were 7 tiger stripes, and there's 7 little pots of paints here. So that's something that you could do and practice with your counting. They also have, let's see, for the number 8, they have 8 musical instruments. So you could talk about the different musical instruments there. So yeah, I thought, and just in terms of counting, it was a great one. There's lots to talk about in the pictures. Again, I really loved that it was a diverse classroom and that they showed children that were different abled. So you've got them seeing the wheelchair there, and that it seems just like a normal classroom. And I think that in terms of activities that you could do with this book, because this also counts backwards down too, which I really liked, that where you get back to the golden rule, 1 golden rule, and they're all sitting in their circle time, which, circle time has a different aspect now because it's all on Zoom. So that's their circle time. But you could say, especially for a child that maybe hasn't been to preschool and they're just going into kindergarten, that, you can say, this is how it would look once we were back in school. They may be seated further apart, type of thing, and everybody's wearing masks. But you can talk about just a little bit about, what was in your school, what was in your classroom, if there are kids that have been in class before. How is it the same or different from what your classroom was? So, because you're starting, and that ties in with the math concept, picking out things that are the same and picking out things that are different. So you're working on attributes there as you talk about same and different. You could take some of the items that they show in the book and then sort them out and count them too. So, if you had, some of the items there, you could say, well, let's see how many of these items we have in our house. So you can kind of, and that relates it to something real. And when you do that, you're also working on one-to-one correspondence too, so that the number 8 is the same as having those 8 objects there. So lots of fun things, I thought. You could talk about, since there's a lot of routines in here, there's snack time, there's nap time. You can talk about routines and how their daily routine is the same or different, and what's your school day like. So I did. There's a lot of things I liked about it. When I was first teaching, I wasn't a real big fan of books that had a lot going on, because if you're reading to a group, it's hard to keep the storyline going.
Mhm.
However, it's a great book for one-on-one where you can point things out. And until I had my own children, like the Richard Scarry books, I realized how valuable that was, because they were really working on vocabulary as they were looking at this book. So even if you have a younger child in the house, there's a lot of things where you can point and name what those objects are. So you can be working on vocabulary at the same time. But I think, some of my favorite things about the book was definitely that they counted up and then they went back down again, that they showed a diverse classroom so every child can see themselves in a book, I think is really important for kiddos. So yeah, well done. It was kind of different than some of the, going to school books that we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a book that does a lot of different things, like you were saying, like it hits the diversity note, there's counting. It's just, I love seeing how publishing is responding to what people are
Mhm.
asking for, which is, more books that represent the world the way that it is, and books that have something going on in addition to a narrative.
Yes. Mhm.
And this one, I
Yeah.
guess, is maybe not a narrative so much as kind of, a sequence of events, but still.
Mhm. Well, and that's really good for kiddos in terms of math development too, that there is a sequence of events.
Mhm.
And so throughout the day. And so that is something that's nice to be able to work with in a real life situation. First we do this, then we do that. And, a lot of kids are really tied into routine. So, and that makes them feel comfortable. So the fact that they can see that there's a routine when they go to school might help those kids who really feel like they need that routine to feel secure. Just another thought there as
Yeah.
we're talking.
You
Like,
bring so much to this. Like, it's so fun to hear your take on these books, because you see stuff that I
mhm.
never even counted the stripes on the tiger, and like the ideas that you come up with for how to use these. Like, it's so great.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, the kids really, you will always have those kiddos that really tune in to the details of a picture.
Mhm.
And I mean, a lot of thought goes into the artwork of these picture books. I mean, some of them are just absolutely gorgeous. They look like works of art.
Yeah.
Others are a little bit more simplistic to fit in with the storyline. But just seeing how the art and the storyline work together are really fun to work on with kids too. Like you can mention that with kids.
So Mel, I want to tell you about this book, Second Banana. Um, I feel ideally suited to my job sometimes because I am less than mature. And this book really spoke to me because it has to deal with jealousy and wanting to feel like you're special. So this takes place in an elementary school classroom, and every year in Mrs. Millett's class, they put on the Food is Fun, Healthy Eating, Good Nutrition pageant. Say that 3 times fast. Every kid plays a food, every kid gets a line, and it is a big deal. And so this little girl is super excited. Like, look at her little face. This is like the best thing ever. Until the parts are passed out, and you can see all these different food groups here. There's broccoli, there's cheese, there's rice, there's bread, there's chicken, sugar, butter, eggplant, pepper. But there's a lot of kids in the class. And so we end up with not just one banana, we have a second banana. And our little hero ends up being the second banana. Look at the little droop there. And she's even a little bit more ripe than the other banana. She's got a little bit more brown spots. So you see the progression of her emotions here. She does not want to play second banana. She wants to be the only banana. When she goes home to talk to her parents about it, all they can do is respond with puns. This part is ripe for acting, says Mom. It's such an appealing role, says Dad. Just don't slip and fall, says my sister. Not funny. So like, and her only line is, second banana says that bananas have potassium too. So like, she doesn't even get a great line. It's just kind of a boring nutritional fact. So it's very depressing to her. But then she talks to the other little girl who plays first banana and realizes that this little girl doesn't want to be first banana. She doesn't even want to be on stage. Like if she could not be in the school play, that would be 100% awesome. So I just love their little costumes here. I like kind of the physical comedy going on. And they figure out a solution where they can each be on stage in a way that makes them feel both completely comfortable. I think this was really fun for social emotional development. I think, you know, jealousy, wanting to feel like you're special is something that definitely comes up in that age range. This is such a funny book. I love it, but I want to hear what you think, Mel.
Oh, I agree. I think it's great for social emotional development. And I just noticed the back of the book where they're all holding hands in the bow on them. But yeah, I thought, and plus, when you talk about jealousy, a lot of times we don't see a lot of books that deal with jealousy that doesn't involve a younger sibling. Mm-hmm. That it's more based on something that's going on in the classroom or an outside situation. So I appreciated this story from that point of view too. Because I think having my own kids, that does happen in the classroom quite a bit. And I have twins, so they, you know, sometimes they're always jealous of each other, right? There were a lot of really neat things about this book that I just thought, especially in terms of problem solving. I love the way that she solved the problem. So this would be something you could talk about with the kids is, you know, well, what would you do if you were in that situation? Or what are some things that could help with that so that she doesn't feel so bad about that? I mean, I thought the solution that the author came up with was great. And plus, I mean, you end a healthy food play with a banana split. I mean, I just think, oh, yeah, you know, that's right up my alley, right? But there's so many things you can do in terms of talking about emotions with the kids. You could also incorporate this book into a healthy foods unit also, which I thought would be really fun. You could also come up with your own play. And so you could use this as kind of the introduction to doing their own play and what might that entail. Because it talks about how long they practiced for too, I believe. So that, yeah, it takes a long time sometimes. So yeah, I thought especially with the feeling aspect of it, the social emotional development, that I would see this having a place in a lot of classrooms, and you could use it with older preschool and early elementary age easily. And I think they would get it, and they could probably kind of relate to her, to how she's feeling. I also think the illustrator, Kate Berube, I love how she does the expressions on their faces. They're great. And so you can talk a little bit about that with the kids. Well, how do you think she's feeling from this picture? And so, I mean, because sometimes kids have a little trouble identifying that and noticing other people's expressions. So that would be a good way to work on that by using this book, I think. But yeah, Second Banana, it was a good story, a very good story, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Super fun.
Yes.
Well, in a similar vein, I have another narrative about food to tell you about, and that's Dozens of Doughnuts. I love this book. I know. So first of all, check out these end papers and try not to drool. It's like this beautiful box of donuts, untouched donuts. So the story begins. Early one morning, as autumn leaves scatter, Luann's busy stirring a big bowl of batter. She'll eat some sweet treats, then warm and well fed, she'll sleep away winter tucked tight in her bed. 1 dozen donuts hot from the pan, toasty and tasty, and all for, is it going to be Luann? No. Ding dong. It's not for Luann. Woodrow? Do you have enough for a neighbor to share? So this little freeloading gopher, or whatever he is, smells the donuts baking, wants to come in, and Luann, being the nice maternal bear that she is, lets him come in and have some donuts. So this keeps happening. All the animals can smell what's going on. I'm like, look at how nice she is. She's just like, oh, yay, company. I can mix up more. But you see, the illustrations are so funny in here. Like, you just see her get made as the animals keep showing up. Like, she's almost counting them in her head. Like, about consideration. She gets pushed to her limit as her meltdown. And then they realize what they've done, and they come back and they've got ingredients and an eighth eaten. So it's a great book about giving and not taking.
I had the opportunity to read this to my neighbors. So they were doing a Friday picnic, and they're all at home doing school. So they meet at lunchtime and socially distance their picnic blankets. And then I read this story to them. And we talked a lot about the donuts. Not only do you see the different names of the donuts, but if you notice, if you look really close, there's little numbers by each donut. So there's 24 different donuts here. So you can do a little bit of math in here too. And I do think from the social emotional standpoint, again, where she gets so mad and she roars. So that's a lot of fun too, to talk about, well, why do you think she got so mad? And how did they make her feel better? So just so much fun. I think the other thing you can do with this is cooking together too. So then you work in the math too. You could even make your own donuts. I mean, at fall time, it's perfect for fall, because I know I've been thinking about pumpkin donuts and cider donuts. So, and I love that when you stretch out the book too, on the back of the book, it says donuts are better shared, and with all the little friends there. So what a fun story. You can also talk about all the animals, because there is one animal in here that we weren't sure if he was a little rat or a possum, because they're out in the woods. It could be either one, really. He looked more like a possum to me. So then we talked about what a possum is, because we don't see too many possums around here. We talked about the skunk, the raccoon, don't see a beaver, but you could move it into a nature lesson and talk about the different animals, and the fact that Luann does talk about before she goes to sleep for the winter. So you can talk about hibernation and what do they really eat? Do all these animals really eat donuts? What do you think they really eat when they're out in the woods like that? So just a fun story. I love the rhyming in it. Because I always find if a book rhymes and it's a little bit longer, it's a great way to keep those younger 3s and 2s involved in the story too, because they really start listening to the cadence and the rhythm of the story. So yeah, a fun story all around. Make up your own flavors of donuts. What would be your favorite donut? Which, the kids can get really silly talking about that, and the adults too. So I thought it made a great Storytime book, but also a great one-on-one book. So yeah, definitely. I think my favorite for Storytime, if with this set of books. I mean, I loved them all, but yeah, I think that was my favorite Storytime book.
Yeah, it seems perfect for sharing at Storytime, I think.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's got a great building of suspense.
Yes.
There's always that pause where you think it's going to be, and how many for Luann? And it's
Yeah.
always ding dong.
Yeah.
And there's some other animal there wanting to chow down.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. We always have so much fun talking about books. I'm glad that you could join us today. So we hope to see you again soon, and keep looking for our videos popping up. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. So have a great day.
Bye.